Hey everybody, this is Jetty Lupe here with my Wings Club Tynix Wings tutorial. Yes, finally, I know a lot of people have been asking me about how I made my wings, so I figured to go ahead and make a video about it, and I did record a lot for these wings in particular. If you've gone back and looked at my other wing tutorial, my Harmony wing tutorial, that one is a little bit rough, and this one is set up similarly where I'm going to do in voiceover, so hopefully you can learn a little bit about it. Let's start off by taking a look at the Tynix transformation. So this is Bloom from Wings Club, Tynix. This is Season 7, kind of the second half of Season 7, I guess. The story of this transformation is that they have to get like tiny to, save the universe and that. But I will say this transformation to me feels very different from the other ones because there are elements on here that you don't see on other transformations. I almost said costumes, but it's not really a costume. I guess they're kind of just wearing a transformation. Anyway, the thing about this transformation is that it's based around crystals and diamonds versus their other transformations have a lot more like material, and the wings are filled with skin, as you may say, or wing skin. So these are kind of different. So I wanted to go ahead and make a tutorial for this because I actually have not seen many Tynix cosplayers at all, and I think part of it is that you can't find a tutorial for these wings and they're kind of different. So of course the way that you make them may be totally different from me, but this is just how I made them. So I wanted to start off with a photo of the finished cosplay altogether. You can find more photos over on my Instagram, and this photo and I believe the photo at the end were taken by Yenra. Just shouting him out there. He's an amazing photographer. You can find him on Instagram as well. And the thing with these wings, and I've made a few different pairs of wings now, these were very light. And you'll see kind of the materials that I used that really helped make them light. And a big thing with making wings this size, or really any wings, is to make sure that you have a good balance of the center of mass and make sure that the center of mass is on your back instead of on the wings themselves. Now, if you've seen my Bloomix wings, those were made completely, not a completely different way, but they were made similarly, but it ended up weighing a lot more, and I didn't account for the center of mass as much. So they were kind of a pain to wear, and they did not hold up like these ones held up. Of course, these ones are made with different materials, but overall, these ended up being kind of a win. I felt like after making a few different pairs of wings, these were definitely the time that I thought, okay, I finally kind of figured this out. And you'll see as we go through the ways that I helped to make sure that the weight was balanced and that they weren't going to be flopping around, and also there is no visible straps, which is my favorite part personally because I love when there does not have to be a visible strap when possible. So let us continue here. If you have questions about my costume in general, feel free to reach out, ask me. I do have a highlight on my Instagram with a lot of the steps that I took under a highlight, so definitely check that out. You can also find almost all of the materials that I used on my Amazon storefront, which I'll link below. And I have to say, this Amazon makes me say this, I do get a commission when you shop through my link, but when you go on there, you'll see under Tynix Bloom, you'll see pretty much a lot of these materials, not just for the wings, but also for the dress and the shoes and the tights and the top and all that, and the wig even. Actually, it's 3 wigs. But anyway, let us move on. Sorry, tangent, but just wanted to tell you everything possible because I don't see a lot of people cosplaying Tynix, so I think it's hard to find someone to ask. And I think I've mentioned this, but you may make this a completely different way than I make it, and that's fine. And you may see somebody else that made theirs a completely different way, so this is just how I made mine. But you can use this as a good thought process for any wings that you want to make, I think. So let's take a look at these wings for half a second here. So like I mentioned before, these wings to me seem like very different from a lot of the other wings that the girls have throughout the seasons. Again, these ones have a crystallized inside versus like regular wing material. So the challenge here was to pick materials that I could make and use that would kind of look more like crystals versus just using tulle or nylon or something like that, which is what most of the other wings can be made out of. So the things that I ended up choosing were to give it this crystallized look. Of course, I've seen some other people that have been able to actually just print out pictures of the inside of the wings and put that inside their wings, and that's great. This is just how I made it, and these are the materials that I used to be able to make these as accurately as possible. And of course, we can't all have actual like crystals and diamonds on us, so you know, the way that the wings are shaped, you kind of just have to work with it as you can. And even in her photos, these bottom bits of the wings, you can't see very much from the front. I will insert a photo where you can see the bottom pieces sticking out, but again, they're not very visible, so you'll mostly see that top piece throughout this, throughout the photos. But throughout the process, I did do both the halves and tops and bottoms. Yeah, we'll go with that. Alright, so starting out, I will have a still picture listing all this stuff, but here's some of the supplies that I used for the wings. So I'm just gonna kind of zoom in, I guess. So I started off with this 12 gauge steel wire that I just got from like Home Depot or Lowe's or something like that. You need big boy pliers to be able to cut this stuff. You need scissors, the little bendy plier things. I have cellophane here. This is the Celebrated brand. I got that at Michael's. They have a nice ship to them, that's why I wanted to use it. You have the hairdryer there, which you'll need to help seal the cellophane later. I also have spray adhesive there and spray Mod Podge. I ended up using different types of Mod Podge. I also have a few different types of paint. And I have these pieces of plastic, these thin pieces of plastic. I ended up not using those on the wings. I ended up using those for little crystals on my dress. Anyway, Instagram will tell you about that. You saw hot glue gun, a box cutter, all these paints, lots of different types of glitter. We'll go over that later, some rhinestones, and yeah, so we'll go over that in a moment. And sorry, I just like breezed through that as fast as I could here. And this is the still image, and I'll have everything listed here hopefully that I use. Now, as I went through, like I said, I ended up not using spray Mod Podge. I ended up using actual liquid Mod Podge, and the reason for that Mod Podge to begin with was to seal that glitter. So I'll show you later how I use the glitter to make the edges of the wings, like the borders. And I love glitter. If you know me, I love glitter, but as you may also know, glitter is very messy and that, so I wanted to find a way to seal the glitter on there so that it wasn't going to be getting all over the place all day as I'm walking around, as people are touching the wings, as I'm running into people because they're very large. And I wore this to MagFest and KatsuCon 2020, which are both pretty crowded conventions, so I wanted to make sure that these were not going to be leaking all over people, because that's not fun. Plus, I wanted to make sure that the glitter lasted. So I ended up using liquid Mod Podge for that because I felt like the spray was just not sealing them as much as I would like to. I did use the spray Mod Podge on my shoes, but that was different, and you know what, it was too smelly. So anyway, use liquid Mod Podge, or at least that's what I did in the end. So let's see, what is next? So first you have to start off by bending your wire, and this can be kind of hard to do. It's 12 gauge steel wire, you guys. So I had a friend, my fiance here is actually bending it for me. I could not bend them, plus I wanted to film bending it, so he bent them for me. And some people will print out, if you can. Now for me, it just was gonna be too much work. They'll print out like full-size picture of the wings and then bend their wire over top of that to make sure they got the exact size in that. But I ended up just doing it kind of by eyesight, and that's why, you know, they're not going to be 100% perfect, but it's really hard to get them 100% perfect. You're bending this really thick wire, and at the little edges and stuff where I needed to seal two pieces together, I just used a tiny bit of duct tape, and that's held up really well. You know, duct tape is pretty strong. And the reason for the 12 gauge wire is that it's not super heavy, but it can really hold a lot of weight. So my Blue Mix wings, I think I used copper wire or some other kind of wire, and it was a lot heavier of a wire. I think it was the same thickness, but it was so heavy that it kind of messed up the weight of the wings, and they were flopping around a lot. So I would definitely suggest steel. And I got this, like I said, I think like Lowe's or Home Depot or something like that. I mean, you can just ask and they'll be able to find it for you. So that's how you make the skeleton of the wings. is by using the wire. And you'll be able to see here, this is the finished outline, and you'll see that I have these little bits on the edges. You can use that to, for smaller wings, you can use that to kind of stick into the back of your shirt. But for me, since I was using a different type of harness, it didn't really matter, but it did help to kind of distribute the weight a little bit, just adding those bits on the end. Plus it was easier to tape them together that way, so that's what those are there. So the first thing that I want to talk about after you make your wire skeleton is actually talk about the harness, because that's the next important thing. So here I have showing you the supplies that I used to make my harness. So I actually ended up using a shoebox, and I just cut it up to have the 3 different pieces. I also have craft foam, felt, and a box cutter. I would also suggest having an X-Acto knife, a good pair of scissors, and some zip ties. So what you'll do is put the 3 pieces of cardboard together. I felt like 3 pieces was good enough and strong enough. I put the foam on the side that was going to be against my back for comfort, and then I covered both sides with the light pink felt, and I did that because I felt like that was going to be matching as best as possible with the light pink top. And I believe in some of the photos you can see the harness just a little bit from the front, but really it's not that big of a deal, and it doesn't take away from it because I covered it with the color that matched it, so I felt like that was pretty important. Let's see, what is next? So then you're gonna want to lay your wings out like we showed before and cut through all of those layers. That's why an X-Acto knife is very nice to have, a very good pair of scissors, X-Acto knife, box cutter to cut through all that. And you're just gonna put a few little slits where you want to put your zip ties. And as I show here, you can see that I'm showing you where I'm gonna put the zip ties. And with these wings, since I'm using cellophane, I'll be able to poke through those pretty easily with, you know, an X-Acto knife or a pair of scissors, so that I can stick the zip ties through. And I ended up zip tying them to several parts of the wings, and that really helped to take the weight away from the edges of the wings and put all the weight kind of on that part that was going to be against my back. I also slipped the nude colored ribbon through, and the reason why I used ribbon, and I know some people will want to use elastic here, I used ribbon because first of all, ribbon is pretty strong. It's pretty hard to rip ribbon. Of course, if you're ripping it, I guess, vertical, but you know, it's not going to break on you as easily as, in my opinion, elastic or fabric is going to break on you. That's why I used the ribbon, and I've used the ribbon before. And the other reason that I use ribbon is that it's adjustable. And I did end up cutting these down from what is in this picture, but I was able to leave it a little bit long so that you can adjust it. Say you want somebody else to wear it and somebody has a different body than you. I just felt like this is a good idea to keep it nice and adjustable. Plus, it's easier to get on, in my opinion, and you can just, you know, untie them quickly to get them off. And there are no visible straps because I did have a hole in the back of my shirt, and I ended up slipping these on and tying them around my arms pretty tight, and then being able to slip the shirt back on. And the hole in the back also has a snap, so I was actually able to snap it back, if that makes sense. You can DM me for photos of that, but that's how I was able to get them on. And since it's a nude colored ribbon, it was pretty invisible against my skin through the sheer shirt, and so therefore it looked like invisible straps, which is, again, something that I appreciate, and I try to, you know, keep the magic as much as I can. So let's talk about the inside, that cellophane. So what I did was I cut out of the cellophane, you know, I matched it up with the wings and cut out these pieces. And when you go to layer this, so sorry, I'm skipping around here, I'm just trying to get my thoughts together here. I went outside. You definitely want to go outside for this. It was very cold and windy, so actually I did have some trouble recording the actual process of this, so I just have to talk about it. So what I did was I ended up doing a clear layer in the middle, and this way, because the wings themselves look like on the edges they're like missing a piece, but I felt like that was going to not hold up as well, so I did a clear layer. Then on both sides of the clear layer, I put the pink layer. Then on both sides of that, on top of that, I put the blue layer. That way, they would all be together and all be sealed. And then I put another layer of clear over all of that to all, again, help seal it, make sure that it wasn't going to fall apart or break apart. And before I did the pieces together, I should mention this, I guess, I slipped the fairy lights in there. So I think I showed you guys the fairy lights earlier, or maybe I showed you them later in this video, but I ended up having fairy lights in my wings, and I actually sealed them in between all these layers. So adjusting with the wind and the spray adhesive. So what you would do is put a layer down, spray the adhesive, put the next layer on, spray adhesive, put the next layer on. So my only problem with the spray adhesive was that it was drying so fast that I couldn't use anything to kind of smooth out those edges, so that's why there's a lot of the cracklies in my wings. But in my opinion, it kind of looks more like crystals when it's in motion. You can kind of see it shift different ways, so in the end it ended up working out. But I did seal those lights in there so that they would be flat and they would look like they're just part of the wings. It was also hard to do it because I only had one string of lights on each side, so it just took many hands. And that's why I did not have the ability to actually film this happening. I needed my hands, my fiance's hands, and it was windy and cold. So doing things outside in December. But as you can see here also, this is before I cut them down. So after you seal all that, you're going to want to get, I would say a heat gun would probably work better, but I only had a hair dryer, and again, it was cold out, so this stuff was drying really quick. So you have to use the heat to seal the edges of your cellophane so that it all kind of snaps together. So then on this next image, you'll see that this is after I've cut it down. The lights are off, but you can see the wires hanging out down there. And I believe that's actually after I zip tied them on. So I zip tied them on before I did the next part, which is the border. I think that was easier to do, in my opinion, because you need to be able to zip tie them through the cellophane and get as close to that wire as possible. And if you have that border in the way, it's going to be harder to do. So I believe this photo is everything on. Let's see. Next photo. Okay, so the next thing is talking about the border. So I used craft foam on both sides of the wire. I chose craft foam because it's cheap and it's very light, and we talked about earlier making sure that your wings are not too heavy, so that's why I chose craft foam. And now it did get a little bit heavier after I put the paint and glitter on and with the glue, but overall this was the lightest option that I could come up with. I originally was going to use poster board, but it wasn't going to lay as flat against the wire as I liked, so this was the next best option. So as you can see here, after I cut out all these big pieces, I ended up doing one continuous piece for each piece of the wing. I thought it was easier than cutting a bunch of small pieces and having to put them together like a puzzle. So I had to find large, long rolls of foam, which was not too hard. I ended up finding it at Michael's just fine, but they only had 2 rolls and I needed a full 2 rolls. So you might have to look around or plan ahead to go out and make sure that you can get your foam. But again, having these nice long pieces instead of having to put them together like puzzles was much easier for me. And as you'll see, I did paint them with regular acrylic paint to give it that ombre effect, so that would be the background of the glitter. And then this next bit you'll see here is a bunch of glitters mixed together. So for each part of the wing, I think I did about 5 different mixes of glitters and ombre'd them throughout the wings. I used so many different kinds of glitters and glitter paints because I really, really wanted the wings to be shining no matter what angle it was at. So I used different sizes of glitters, different types of glitters, holographic, not holographic, flat, flaky, all different kinds, because again, as the wings are moving, as you're moving, they'll always be shimmering, and in the show they're always shimmering, and so it's hard to kind of get that in real life because of course we're not actually magical fairies. So that's why I use so many different concoctions of glitters, I guess, as you can say. So after I put the glitter on, I had to use layers and layers of Mod Podge. I put a Mod Podge layer down, stick the glitter on, and then Mod Podge it again. Like, it was a lot of just, I don't know how much Mod Podge I used. Like, I showed that tiny little bottle there. I definitely used like that tiny little bottle, I think a second tiny little bottle, and I ended up using like 3/4 of a larger jar of it. I really wanted them to be sealed, and I think I did about 4 layers of glitter and again ombre. I think the whole glittering part took about 4 or 5 hours, so definitely took some time. So that's my Tynix build for the wings. If you have any other questions, please feel free to DM me. You can go over to my Instagram and check out my highlights for this specific cosplay to see more things about this cosplay, and the wings might be in a bit of a more chronological order, but I wanted to break it down this way just so that you can use each little part of this tutorial for wings that you want to make. And comment below what wings you're making or what Wings Club cosplay you're doing, and let me know. So I hope that this was helpful, whether you are building Tynix wings, whether you're building a different type of wing, maybe one that involves cellophane, you just wanted to see somebody else use it. So hopefully you learned something from this. And I do have my Harmony wing tutorial tagged on here somewhere somehow, and that is a much more basic, quick wing that you can make in probably like an hour. These wings themselves took me a while, maybe like at least 12 hours, probably more than that. So these wings were definitely quite a lot of work, and so were my Blue Mix wings. So big wings are gonna be work, but I'm hoping that this tutorial helps you to want to at least try it. I know that you look at these crazy Wings Club transformations and you think, how in the world am I gonna be able to make that? And there are just some basic things to think about, and biggest thing is balancing that weight and figuring out a harness that works for you, that you're not feeling the weight so much. And anyway, it worked out, and these wings are pretty indestructible. I've hit lots of people with them on accident, so that steel wire, it's very helpful. So anyway, go ahead and let me know in the comments below what you're working on, and I'll talk to you guys again soon.